Welcome to Postcards from Texas. I'm Mike Vance. John F. Kennedy visited Houston twice as president. The first time, all about the space program, and it included one of the best presidential one-liners of all times.
The September '62 speech at Rice, during that visit he toured NASA facilities, got a very early look at what the agency was doing in regards to the lunar program. That was also when he gave his speech at Rice Stadium.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things.
It being September, he noted that it was very hot outside. He sort of linked the Houston heat to the temperatures that the astronauts feel upon re-entry.
The second time was part of a two-day swing through Texas in November 1963. After a stop in San Antonio, the Kennedys came here to the Rice Hotel. The banquet staff of the Rice was preparing a huge banquet where the president would honor Congressman Albert Thomas.
We were first of all notified that we had to go through a lot of security checks. Everything on our background that the hotel knew had to be open books for Secret Service and FBI.
Bill Hobby, managing editor of the Houston Post, was with Houstonian Jack Valenti.
Jack Valenti was he was a columnist for the Houston Post, wrote a weekly column, and he had worked for LBJ, and so he and I were going out to the airport together to greet Vice President Johnson. And so just as we're leaving the office, my secretary said, "Hey, can I come with you?" Sure. She didn't care anything about JFK or LBJ. She wanted to see Jackie Kennedy.
On the way to the airport, Hobby's secretary remarked about her recent trip to Dallas.
And she said, well, my sister said, told me that there's a new nightclub in Dallas that all the kids like to go to. It's called the Carousel. And said it's run by a gangster named Jack Ruby. Now, that was the first time I'd ever heard the name Jack Ruby, but we heard an awful lot about Jack Ruby. But that was just an interesting coincidence driving out there.
People lined the route from the airport to see President and Mrs. Kennedy.
My father adored Kennedy. And when we found out that Kennedy was coming to Houston, my dad really wanted to see him. And so we knew that the motorcade was going to leave Hobby Airport and go down Broadway.
I escorted him in from the airport. There were 6 of us at the car, and J.W. Kelly was one who rode right alongside Kennedy himself for protection.
And of course, hundreds of people joined us.
Like you never imagined. It looked like a parade. But we flew. They didn't get much of a glimpse. But the top was down on the car, and he waved to everybody.
And so the motorcade went by. We had a glimpse of JFK and Mrs. Kennedy in her pink suit. And it was just a highlight of my father's life. He had seen him for 20 seconds at the most, but it was something he really wanted to do.
At the Rice, employees were told to be ready.
It was close to dark time when we were told that the president was approaching the hotel motorcade. He came in through the motor lobby of the, which is on the rear of the hotel. At that time, the motor lobby.
We escorted him to the Rice Hotel. When we got there were people all over. They were on the rooftops. Of course, HPD had offices on the rooftops, windows, and whatever have you. And had a difficult time. They had an alley made for him and walked him through it, but he still stopped and shook hands and touched people.
We all got a glimpse. We all went out. We were out in the street. I was right there in the corner of Texas Avenue and Travis, where employees go in.
And when they came through, he saw us and he and Jackie, and they came over and shook our hands and started to talk to us about whatever.
He went by us because we went by right the corner of Travis Street and Main Street to go to the motor lobby. So we got a real good look at him.
President Kennedy stopped in the Rice Hotel ballroom to give a meeting of local LULAC leaders a special treat.
I'm glad to be here today, and in order that my words will be even clearer, I'm going to ask my wife to say a few words to you also.
Estoy muy contenta de estar en el gran estado de Texas.
They then headed to the Coliseum for the banquet with 3,500 attendees who heard the president and the vice president.
By that time, we had already prepared everything. We had set up the Sam Houston Coliseum with tables, round tables of 12. And we set for like 1,000 people. And the speaker's table, one speaker's table, elevated quite a bit. The banquet went off, I mean, just as perfect as anything that we had ever undertaken. Everybody extremely careful. Nothing was dropped. You couldn't hear any dishes coming onto the... Yes, we had carpeting on some of the floor, the central part, but then it's nothing but cement because it's the Sam Houston Coliseum.
Kennedy was here, as you know, for the opening of the Albert Thomas Convention Center. And he had a suite reserved for him at the Rice Hotel. And a lot of people think he spent that night there. He didn't. He went on to Fort Worth. Stayed, I think, at the Texas Hotel in Fort Worth. And then went to Dallas the next day for the motorcade. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Life for the people who had served the president the night before returned to normal that Friday.
And Big November, especially, we had an extremely heavy, busy schedule. At noon, intercom go off. And then the voice, kind of not very stable, unusual tone to be hearing from an intercom. Very pitched voice saying that President Kennedy has been shot in Dallas. And I stopped right there. I just froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't say a word. I could barely breathe, really, because after all, he was, we're extremely proud of having taken him that evening before. So we just stopped the service. People started coming out of the dining rooms, going out, going down the staircase or the elevator, because we had elevators, of course, and we had the escalator, going just out down into the main lobby, out into the street, going back to their offices if they could. We did not finish our dinner service. We had just started luncheon service. No one luncheon service was completed. It was terminated. We couldn't.
Local press rooms were abuzz with the tragic news.
The way newspapers got their news was by teletype. We had a wire room full of teletype tickers. I'm a 31-year-old kid, but I had sense enough to know then this would be the biggest news story I'd ever handled. And I didn't know what to do. You know, the managing editor is the guy supposed to know what to do. And the city circulation manager, a guy named J.D. Hancock, he'd been selling the Houston Post longer than I'd been alive. And he said, "Bill, you're going to go extra, aren't you?" "Yeah, that's what I'm going to do."
Ask anyone who was school age or older on November 22nd, 1963, and they can tell you where they were around lunchtime that day.
What happened the next few days, of course, was shocking. My dad took it awfully hard.
I went straight home and sat down in an easy chair and just kept watching the TV in front of me, sipping a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Being energized from meeting the folks and escorting him, the privilege of it, the pleasure of it, it was a big downside to face the next day when we saw it on TV.
But then everybody that for a year after, all of a sudden you just think about it and you just start crying. And I still have a little trouble.
Up next, Vietnamese shrimpers.